Voting is one of the cornerstones of a democratic republic. Trust in America's election institutions or election integrity has been shattered. Electronic voting machines, mail-in ballots, ballot drop boxes, no voter ID, and the emergency COVID election rules that seem to be here to stay. Tucker articulates this brilliantly.
And as to the question of the election, I'm very concerned. I'm very, very, very concerned. And I don't understand, I guess I do understand why the institutional Republican Party in Washington hasn't done more to secure elections. We have this problem of electronic voting machines, which are not more efficient. They don't produce more precise answers than written ballots, and they don't get us the tally quicker than written ballots. So the question is, why do we have them? Okay, that's one area. But the much more significant fact, I would say, is that the way Americans vote was changed completely using the pretext of COVID. And the idea was that Americans were so sick with this killer virus that emerged from a pangolin in a wet market. They were selling mammals in a seafood market for some reason in Wuhan. They were so incapacitated they couldn't actually make it to the polls. And so they needed to have their ballots anonymously picked up in these drop boxes without using voter ID. And had nothing to do with voter fraud at all. It was purely a medical response. Well, now COVID is, of course, still around. It hasn't gone anywhere. Once Fauci created it, it's going to be here forever. But we're not worried about COVID anymore for some reason. But the voting changes remain in place. And it's very clear to me that the point of them was to abet voter fraud, obviously. And I don't think that okay, that's fine, there's voter fraud around the world, but you can't simultaneously claim that you're here to defend democracy and abet voter fraud at the same time. Because voter fraud undermines democracy very obviously, more than anything else, right? If people can't trust election outcomes, you don't have a democracy. And Americans can. And I'm very distressed about it. And I don't really know, but there seems to be no appetite to do anything about it. I mean, one of the things, and I won't go on, it's the last thing I'll say, but the question of voter ID is not a question in most civilized countries. France, for example, you don't have an ID, you can't vote. I mean, because how do we know who you are? And we take elections seriously. Even in France, primitive, stinky France takes elections so much more seriously than we do. It's shameful to me as an American. And so, but we were told you can't do that because African Americans just don't have IDs. Really? Is there evidence for that? So in my country, you can't do anything without a government ID. You can't cash a check. You can't have a bank account. You can't buy a pack of cigarettes. You can't check into a hotel. You can't get on an airplane. You can't get on a Greyhound bus. You can't do anything without a government-issued ID. Of course, you can't drive a car. And so some enterprising independent journalists went out and tried to get the numbers on this. And it turns out nobody doesn't have a government ID. If you don't have a government ID in the United States, that means you can have no contact with government. You get nothing from government. You don't exist in the eyes of the government without a government ID. So the adult population of Americans of any color who don't have government-issued IDs is like approximately zero. Okay? It's like someone in a nursing home. And yet nobody in the media noted this. And to this day, we don't have voter ID laws in state after state because it's considered racist. And it's yet another example of the way that ruthless people with, I think, evil intent leverage the inherent decency of the citizens of our country to get their way. If they said, we're just going to commit voter fraud, and if you don't like it, we're going to shoot you, the people of the United States would rise up as one and put them down. But instead they say, you're a bad person if you ask questions, you're a racist. Well, no decent person wants to be a racist, including me. That's awful. I think God created every person with identical moral value. Identical. We are all creations. That's my view. So racism is like abhorrent to me. So I don't want to be called racist, and neither is anyone else in my sweet country, because Americans are really decent people. So that claim right there is enough to shut down the opposition sufficient to roll over it. And that is exactly what's happened. And I hope we're at a point where we just stop taking them seriously. These are people who don't care about the meaning of words, who will accuse you of abetting a mass shooting because you think your country has too many illegal aliens. Like, it's freaking insane. So obviously they don't really mean it. They don't really care. They just want you to be quiet because you're inconvenient. And my strong advice to you is don't be quiet. Because if you're quiet, I mean, anyone who would force you and your children to take the COVID vax long after it became clear it was neither safe nor effective, anyone who would do that, I mean, what wouldn't they do to you, honestly? Like, they've shown who they are, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Tucker. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Huge hat tip to Tucker Carlson from the Tucker Carlson Network. If you're not a member, I highly recommend joining. I am not affiliated with Tucker, and I don't get a penny if you join his network. And a special hat tip to Pepe Lives Matter from Telegram. I strongly recommend giving them a follow as well, especially if you like an alternative spin to the mainstream pre-programmed take on things. Links are in the description below. Now it's your turn to share this with anyone you think would benefit from it. This is how we reprogram and take our country back. We put the power of information back in the hands of the people. Until next time, remember, everyone wakes up at their own pace, and you are not alone. If you thought this video was helpful, hit the like button below, leave a comment, join the channel, and share. God bless America, God bless this podcast, and God bless you. Stay frosty, my friends.